Hi, everybody. Bob Wilkie here with you with I Got Mind. Excited to be here tonight and share this very valuable information in our series on gaining the mental edge. This whole thing came about when we started working with the Calgary Flames Foundation during the pandemic. And we've developed a great relationship that's really allowed us to do these types of things. The importance of mental health in youth sports, it's massive. And we're seeing more and more of the NHL and the NBA and the NFL athletes talking about all the different issues that they're struggling with their mental health. And we know that unfortunately it starts at a younger age. So tonight we're thrilled to be here and be presenting this information, all courtesy of the Flames Foundation. And it's really I can't tell you how grateful I am to the Flames Foundation and to Hall Services. They're just wonderful people. Without them, these types of things are just not going to be possible. And we've worked really hard for the last 15 years in trying to make sure that we're developing relevant content that makes a difference in the athletes' lives and the coaches' lives and also the parents, because I know over the last 15 years that there's been a lot of conversation with parents that are concerned about their kids and their mental well-being. The last 2 years has been hugely challenging for so many, and we want to get everybody feeling good again. And that's why we put this series together. So we're really excited to be sharing the information. What we're going to be talking about and what you can expect to learn tonight there's several different objectives that we want to show you. First and foremost, why emotions can cause us to shut down. I think with athletes, it can be such a difficult thing. For them to know what to say and how to say it. They're not quite sure of how things are, why I'm experiencing the things that I want to. The importance of teaching this early. I'm going to share some information that's critically important for you to be able to understand why we need to be doing this at a very young age. And we're going to talk about the challenges that come from not talking it out. When we shut down, when we close off, when we're not willing to share or be vulnerable, we're going to talk about that too. And then we're also going to share about the power of validation. We've got some really cool clips from prior events that we've done with Dr. Bruce Perry is going to be with us. And there's just so many different things. We've got Connor Zary, Calgary Flames first rounder as well. That's going to be great to be able to share some information with you. So, when we start talking about why I started doing this, it's really such a long history of not being able to deal with different things. And, as a young athlete, I wanted nothing more than to become an NHL hockey player. You ask any of my friends growing up, you ask, my parents, that's all I ever talked about was wanting to be an elite level athlete, to be on TV, to be rich and famous and to be successful. And unfortunately, as I started my journey, there was a lot of things that started to occur that really caused me to start shutting people out. And I didn't know why or what was happening to me. And there's a lot of different information that we're going to share tonight. It started as early as age 10, not really knowing what to do. And there's so many different things that I was going through with the difficulties and challenges of trying to understand my coach, and why he was telling me to do this, why he got so angry. And then, listening to my teammates in the locker room and how they were being judgmental against the coach or against each other. It was really confusing because all I wanted to do was play hockey. And for, most of my life, we were all able to do that without all of these other distractions that were becoming very confusing. As I started to make the leap into the elite stream of hockey, and getting into quadrant 13, 14 bantam, it really started to cause a lot of problems for me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know why I was experiencing the things that I was experiencing. I wasn't quite sure what I could tell Dad because I could see that he was struggling with his own emotions. And then Mom too, it was difficult for all of us because it's such a powerful experience and our emotions are all, heightened. And we don't think straight. We can't talk about it rationally. Everything turns into a big fight. And so it causes a lot of problems. For me, it just created more and more chaos in my mind, which caused me to become more and more withdrawn. At age 15, making the jump into midget hockey and really struggling in that locker room to figure out where I just fit socially. because 15 years old, you're not supposed to make those types of teams. And so there was a lot of excitement that I was reaching these levels at a young age. But then there was also that, fear and doubt and worry, because I wasn't really being accepted. I was being, treated as a rookie. I was being treated differently. So it was hard for me to feel comfortable in being able to perform, because all these different things were going on. We've got a short clip here from Connor Zari, who is a first-round draft pick from the Calgary Flames. I was introduced to Connor while I was working with the Kamloops Blazers, and we developed a really cool relationship because I knew the road that Connor was trying to walk down. And so I asked him earlier this fall if he'd be willing to share a little bit of his experience. And, Connor is no different than me telling my story, and it's very common that it starts at a very young age. So go ahead and listen to Connor share his story, and then I'll be right back.
When you get to that age, it's Pee Wee, the hockey got a higher level, and there was just more expectations. I think everyone knows in Western Canada that Bantam is the big year, the second year Bantam, you got the WHL draft. So I think just that Pee Wee is a couple years away from that. So you're trying to build up yourself and the expectations for yourself. You've always for me, I was always a good player, but I think when you get into it was better hockey when you got up to Pee Wee, and it was more province-wide than before. It wasn't just you're playing a couple teams in the city. So I think that's when the pressure started to come, and a lot of pressure from coaches and just putting a lot of pressure on yourself. I think for me, I was always the best player. And when you get to Pee Wee and you're playing more variety of players and older players and better players, it gets to be a time where you might not be the best on the ice every night. So I think that's when you put more pressure on yourself to do more. And I think that's when it probably started happening for me.
And it really doesn't matter whether you're trying to be elite or not. I mean, any kid out there, they always want to do their best, because we start to have the recollection that when we're at sport, it's fun. Everybody's excited. But then we get to a certain level where not everybody's excited. Everybody can be a little bit more judgmental or a little bit more harsh. And as a young person, I can tell you from personal experience that really caused a lot of uncertainty for me. And in doing this work, we've learned so much about all the different things that we can go through. And I think it's really important to talk a little bit about the brain development and the research that's come out over the last 25 years. All of the staff here at I Got Mind participated in some training this spring, and it was all about all courtesy of the Alberta Family Wellness Initiative. If you get a chance to check it out, I'll get Sadie to put it into the chat for everybody. It's a completely free resource, and the information was just invaluable. So when you see the pictures here and you see that at birth, this is the synapses of our brain. So there's not a lot going on. We're just being babies. But when we get to age 8, you can see how thick it is. And it's our brain trying to form these connections that truly do help us figure out how we're going to be. And you can see at age 14, how it's already starting to prune the different synapses away that aren't connecting. And it's just so important to understand that, the earlier we can start to develop these things as parents, as coaches, and instill them into these young athletes, it's going to benefit them in more ways than you can possibly imagine. But, when we think about our own brain development, we didn't have a lot of that. It was more really about just suck it up, right? You got to get tough. You got to be more mentally strong. You got to be able to deal with these things. Or when you did try and verbalize, we were being shut down, and, you're silly for acting that way or thinking that way. You got to grow up and you got to get tough. And so we, as the adults of this generation, don't necessarily have the skills to support the new athletes in the 21st century. And that's why I Got Mind is so passionate about this, is because we want to stop, this chain of behavior that's still continuing to cause more issues. And, with the last 2 years and our ability as the adults to not manage ourselves or talk about it because we were just never raised and developed those skills, we're denying our children of that same opportunity. We've got a great clip from Dr. Bruce Perry from one of our webinars that we did that I think is very valuable and very helpful. So go ahead and watch this, and we'll be right back.
So much of what you said is so important that one of the things that does happen a lot of times when anybody, whether it's a child or an adult, expresses an intense emotion, it makes the people around them feel uncomfortable. And so a lot of times people will try to undo it or minimize it or distance themselves. So if you have, like Sean said, if you have a history of expressing the way you really feel, and then having somebody tell you that that's not the way you feel, you say something like, I don't want to go to grandpa's because, he plays games that I don't like, right? And the parent says, oh, your grandpa loves you, we're going to send you to grandpa's. So like I tried to tell you that something bad's happened in there, but you undid my feeling. And I think a lot of that happens, that happens with adult communication, and it happens with adult to child communication. And kids are in this interesting situation because they're kind of vulnerable in this adult world. And so they learn to kind of do whatever they have to get through the adult world. And if I express an emotion and it's too intense and the adults don't like it, they respond a certain way, I'm not telling you. And I think that's part of the reason. It is hard, I think, to create that space that Sean's talking about, where you literally listen to them say how they think that you're a bad parent and you didn't do this and you didn't do that and why didn't I get that and so got this, and we try to jump in right away and go, well, listen, when I was your age, or we try to undo all of that by saying, I had one pencil and I used it all through grade school and I loved it. Yeah. And so it's interesting, we kind of give them these double messages, right? That we want to hear you express your emotions, but when you express it, a lot of times we undo those.
Yeah. When I think about all the times in my life that an adult undid my feelings, I think that's what was the most painful, is that I started to think and really feel that I was alone on this journey. And again, nobody's to blame. This is just purely not knowing. I don't think that anybody was malicious or trying to make me feel that way. It's just, that's what they knew. That was their skill set at the time. And, when we talk about, the brain development, you can imagine what's going on. If you're listening to this and you've got kids, you've done that. I've done that to my kids. And it's really hard not to do. And what we need to realize is that, the synapses, what the brain's trying to form is, it's connecting and creating these neurons. And our mental health clinician, Sean O'Grady, says all the time, it's the neurons that fire together, that wire together. And that's so important to understand, is that we're creating their ability, their skill set, no different than all of the extracurriculars that we put them into to develop their skills, the extra camps, the extra power skating, the extra coaching. Those are all things to create those neurons so that they can do those physical skills. It's the same thing with the mental skills of being able to talk about what I'm feeling and have those feelings validated rather than shut down. Because the minute I'm told that that's stupid or that doesn't make any sense, that's when I'm going to stop coming to you. And I think what Dr. Perry said there is just so critically important, because we're creating these little people and we're helping them with their skill sets. And, a lot of times we might not be doing the best thing. And it's only through education that we can learn how to be better as the adults that are really going to help the athletes. Now, listen, for the athletes that might be listening or tuning in, it's really important for you guys to understand that if that is the case, then you need to find somebody else in your life that you can talk with. Just because you're shut down once, and this is the mistake I made, you tend to isolate yourself and you're making it way too difficult. The kids this year that we were working with, we were talking about habits, and I started asking them the question, so have you ever felt like this? And they're going, yeah. And I said, well, did you ever tell anybody about it? I said, no. I said, then how are you learning how to deal with it? And it's like, well, we're just trying to figure it out. These are 13-year-old kids that are trying to figure out one of life's most difficult things, and that's being able to communicate about how we're feeling. The other part about our feelings that's really interesting is that we have so many emotions that we can experience as human beings, but we typically only express sadness or happiness or anger, or fear. Those are the top five. And when we don't talk it out, we tend to act it out. And so when we start to have all these different emotions that we're experiencing for the first time, and we don't know why we're feeling them, they're very powerful, especially when you start to involve sport. They can cause a lot of problems because I don't know how to verbalize it. And kids say that to me all the time when we're talking about it. It's like, well, why didn't you tell somebody? It's like, I didn't know how to. So, it could be that you're shutting them down as a parent or a coach, telling them that they're silly for feeling that way. Or it could simply be that they don't know how to express what they're feeling because it's just the basic emotions. And one you're going to see is, and I see it all the time with young athletes, is it's either that emotional breakdown where they're in tears, or it's that extreme anger where you're just going, what the heck was that? And so it's important to understand that a lot of those things are contributors to the fact that we don't have the skill set as a family to be able to do this in a healthy way so that you, the young person, the athlete, can benefit from it. So we need to learn some new skills. And it's really important that we understand the power of those emotions, and being able to express them is going to be critically important to be able to talk about them. When we can talk about them together in a very productive way, great things will happen. Because there's lots of challenges, outside the family team, the most important team. Well, we all have to play on different teams, and these young people are going and playing on teams, and these other people don't necessarily possess the skill set of how to understand or what to do when somebody's expressing their emotions. Dr. Perry talked about how uncomfortable it can be because I don't even know what to do. I have a young person in front of me and they're expressing all these emotions. I don't have that skill set. My parents never taught me that. My coaches never helped me with that. So I don't know how to help them. So it's a bigger problem than just the athletes not being able to communicate. This absolutely involves the adults and being able to develop their own skill set so that they can truly help. Because I can tell you, when the fear takes over, in a young person's mind, in a parent's mind, in a coach's for that matter, it's just an awful feeling. It creates that uncertainty. I don't know how to help them. And it creates some doubt. Well, are we doing the right thing? Should we be moving? Should we be talking to the coach? Should we be asking? So all this excessive worry. And a lot of times what I'll see is parents start to argue within each other, within themselves, because you'll have two different opinions of what should be done. And it's really about coming together collectively to understand that we can eliminate this fear. We don't have to get into this, what we call catastrophic thinking, creating all the worst case scenarios where they're going to blow it. They're not going to get to the next level. This is going to make them weak. They're going to want to quit. These are all the things that happen, not only for the parents, but for the coaches and for the adults in their lives as well. So we really need to understand the role of fear and what it plays because of our lack of skill set. It's our ignorance. We simply don't know how to do these things. And so that's why talks like these are so important, because when we can have these kind of conversations, we can start to eliminate a lot of that uncertainty, doubt, worry, and catastrophic thinking, because now we're educated and we know how to do it. We're able to talk it out and find the solution that's going to make everybody feel good and allow us to go out and try it again. Because there's lots of failure out there for these young people because they're learning. They don't know. They're experiencing things for the first time. So it's important that we understand that we really want to be able to get to that point where we can talk these things out. When we throw sports into it, life can be challenging enough, going to school and just being a young person in the world today. But when we have passion and we want to be involved in sports, that performance can really affect our mindset. And there's several different things that we've been able to identify over the last several years is, the environment that they're going into could be causing a lot of stress or fear for them. They've got a coach that's not a great communicator or not the style of communicator that they need. I'm used to mom and dad and us sitting around and talking about it. But the minute I ask my coach a question, boy, he sure gets upset and asks me, was I not listening? Things like that, when I was listening, but I just had a question. So those are other things that can really shut them down. When we talk about the outcomes, so many of the athletes today are so desperate to be perfect. and they want nothing but success, and they're afraid of failing. And so, teaching your young person that they're going to have some failures included in this. This is going to be difficult for them. What we need to do is we need to practice, we need to get better so that we can start to enjoy more success. At the beginning of any season, to have the expectation that you're going to come out of the gates and be extremely successful from the get-go, there's not a lot of people that can do that. There is a getting to figure it out phase. And especially because these athletes are moving from level to level so quickly, oftentimes the teams are completely different. So, having those realistic expectations, and that's one of those things that we'll be talking about in this limited series that we're doing as well, is being able to manage that. And then the other one is the social interactions. They're starting to get to that point of their development where mom and dad aren't as important as being accepted socially and being a part of the group. So a lot of times you're going to see behavior change or lack of communication simply because, well, they don't want to rat out their friends. This is something that they say all the time is, I don't want to be a tattletale. I don't want to rat on anybody. And I always tell them, but if they're doing something that they shouldn't do, then we want to kind of create that accountability. But I don't have a safe space to do that. And, my experience is that if I say something, either nothing's going to happen or it's going to come back to me. So I just rather not say something. I know I was talking with my young son and his friend one day, and they were talking about some bullying that was going on in the playground. And I said, well, did you say anything to anybody? And they said, well, no. And I said, well, why didn't you say something? It's like, because they don't ever do anything about it. So this is the perception. And I think Dr. Perry said it really well in his videos. These kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. They know what they're going to need to do as they go through and have people validate and support or, condemn and shut down. And as a young person trying to figure it out, the more environments that we can create that are, emotional safe spaces for everybody, they're just going to be that much better off. And it's a skill set that's essential. Unfortunately, it's a skill set that's a little bit rare. The importance of emotional safety is just absolutely critical to understand. You can see the words on the screen there talking about, I hear you, and compassion and empathy. It's imperative during emotional times of emotional distress when a young person is trying to figure out how I feel and why I feel this way and what to do about it. We have to be able to create that emotionally safe space, because that's what leads to that emotional connection, which creates the emotional intensity. Now we have a real relationship because I can be open with you no matter what we're talking about. And you're going to validate me. You're going to help me understand. You're going to just listen to me. Because if we don't have that intimacy, it's really going to create that emptiness, and it's that emotional discomfort. And they don't want to feel that. They feel that already. We don't want to go into a scenario where it's our parents or coaches or even our teammates where we feel that same, emptiness, that lack of emotional support. So we really got to learn to foster a sense of emotional safety with one another. And that's what a real relationship is, that, you accept me for who I am. And I can verbalize with you exactly what I'm feeling, and you're not going to judge me for that. You're not going to make me feel bad for that. A lot of times you're not even going to give me your opinion unless I ask for it. And I think that's one of the most important things that we really need to do as parents and coaches, is when we do have a young person that finally wants to open up to us, that we just sit and listen, that we just make space for them. And at the end, being able to say things like, that must be really hard. I can see why your behavior's changed. Just validating that they've expressed these emotions that are challenging to them. Even if you're in your own mind, you think that they're overreacting, or that it's not that big a deal. That doesn't matter. It's not about you. It's about them and their ability to be vulnerable and to really help the person that's in front of us. And whether this is parent to parent, whether this is coach to parent, or we throw the athlete's involvement in there, these are the safe spaces that we need to make sure that we're creating, because emotions run high during sports and people can say things that they regret later on. But what they don't realize is that they've taken away that opportunity for that emotionally safe space to be created. And now you've created a little bit more fear and uncertainty in me. And that's a really difficult thing as a young athlete to try and navigate when the adults aren't being the support that we thought they should be. I mean, that was my expectation, is that when I asked a question, I was going to get an answer of how to do things differently. And what I found on my journey is a lot of people didn't possess these skills either, because what I used to hear is, well, you better figure it out quick because you're blowing the opportunity. So not only did they not validate my feelings, but they didn't give me an answer, and they created more stress. And unfortunately, in competitive sports, this is what happens quite often, way too often. Emotions are the driver of the bus. And when you see that in the first one, they're the pain-based behavior, using the phrase "I'm fine," and this happens with kids a lot, is they say, "Oh, I'm fine, don't worry about it." But what "I'm fine" means is that I'm unhappy, I'm upset, I'm insecure, I'm not sure, I'm stressed, or I'm irritated, or I feel rejected. There's so many different things that create these pain-based behavior, and we're really going to see a change in our young athletes. That leads to shutdown mode. Now we're just going to close up. We're done. I'm not trusting you anymore. You have not created a space for me to be safe emotionally, to express myself. So I'm just not going to do it anymore. And unfortunately, a lot of young athletes put themselves in this situation because they tried once and it doesn't work. So now I'm done. And what we've learned is that those positive emotions, they absolutely are game changers. It creates helpful, positive thinking. Now they're going to be more motivated to be able to do the things that are difficult anyway. But I know that I've got the support. I talked it all out with my parents last night. I'm not carrying it around anymore. I feel really good. It's going to create that growth mindset. So they're continuously hungry now. They want to share everything with you, which is great. That's what we want, is we want to be involved in the experience. And when we create that safe space and we teach them the skills to do it, they're going to want to do it more. Why? Because it feels better than the other way. And so, again, when we're stressing the importance of being able to open up and be that support for our athletes, or for the athletes to have the confidence to be able to do it, we need to find those emotionally safe spaces. It's just so important that we're able to dig a little deeper, to keep trying to find what we need, rather than to put ourselves in that pain, because it's not a pain that we need to live in. And it all comes through education. One of the things that I love to talk about, and I learned this from, again, Sean O'Grady, he's a director over at Hull Services, and he's just been so helpful in helping me learn more and more about our brain, is this thing called regulation. A lot of times when we're talking about the issues of what these kids are dealing with, and judging or unvalidating their feelings, is they're coming to you dysregulated anyway. These emotions have happened. I don't know what to do. So they become dysregulated. That's where you see the emotion. That's where you see the real edginess. That's where you see the snide little comments back, being that little smart ass that we always say. Those are all key indicators that we've got some dysregulation going on. And what we have to do is help them get regulated. Saying, listen, I can't talk to you when you're in this state. I really want to help you. Why don't we go for a walk? Or why don't you go listen to some music for a little while and come down when you're feeling better? That's when we can have a conversation. So really helping them learn when they're dysregulated, and then having those conversations to help them learn how to regulate themselves. Because if they start to learn how to do this, again, the neurons that wire together, we want them to be able to recognize when they're becoming too emotional, and then be able to, do things to regulate themselves, and then communicate about that. When we're regulated, it allows us to use the smart part of our brain. It allows us to problem solve. It allows us to communicate openly and create and build a healthy perspective. And most importantly, it allows us to stay connected. We need each other. We're way better together than we are individually. I mean, that's the power of a team. That's a lot of times why we get our kids into sport, is because we want them to learn how to play nice with others. And I know in the workforce, anybody that's got some sort of experience playing high level sports, those are very valuable assets for that company, because they know how to work within a team environment. They know what the pressures are because they've dealt with them as a student, as a student athlete. It's very valuable. So if you're an athlete, listen out there, it's really important that these are skills that will absolutely last you a lifetime and keep you away from a lot of the mental health issues that we see with the excessive stress or higher levels of anxiety than normal or depression. These are all things that happened to me because I didn't possess this skill set. And, my job now is to make sure that I'm helping other people understand and develop the proper skill set so that they truly get out of sport what they want. And that's to learn how to be successful and the best that they can be. And that's not an easy job on any day. You watch the professionals and they have slumps and they have off days and everybody's judging them and the reporters are ripping them apart and asking them very personal questions. Well, somebody that doesn't know how to regulate themselves is not going to be able to go into that environment and do very well. That's why you're going to see a lot of reactions from those athletes, is because they're dysregulated. When they get up and storm out from an interview, they're upset already emotionally and they're just going to shut down. And so it's a very valuable skill. Some ways to regulate, and I think this is where we get into how do we help you. So first thing is to recognize that your young person or me as a parent is dysregulated. So now is probably not a good time. The car ride to, the car ride from can often be times where we are very dysregulated. I remember several times on the way home after a performance where dad was completely dysregulated. He was so upset about the way that I was played, whether I was playing, on this line or not enough. And then the other parents, they were egging him on and saying different things. So he became very dysregulated. I knew that I couldn't talk to him in that state. And so learning how to regulate ourselves pre, during, and post sporting event, whether it's practice or game, is critically important. And so being able to talk it out is one of the most important things. On the car ride too, really setting the stage, getting them nice and calm, getting them focused. If they want to listen to music, let them listen to music. If they want to ask questions, asking them what they want in that moment is very helpful. If it's a therapist that needs to get involved to deal with some of the issues and to learn some skills, fantastic. Getting professional help is never a bad thing. And we really need to look at it completely different than, unfortunately, we do a lot of times. It's not a weakness, it's a strength, because what you're trying to do is enhance the skill set. There's life coaches out there. There's the coaches that they have. Maybe they have a connection with a coach that's fantastic, that I trust, that I can go and talk to, or it's a teacher, or it's an aunt or uncle. There's several different options out there. And what we have to do is find the one that works for us. The other thing that works really well is journaling. And, when I was introduced to journaling, I was 24 years old. I was playing in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and I was struggling terribly. Probably one of the lowest points in my life. And so I went and saw a therapist, and he gave me a couple of techniques that I can use to prepare myself for games and to manage myself during the games. But one of the most valuable skills that he introduced me to was journaling. And he said, listen, all I want you to do is write out your thoughts. There's no right, there's no wrong. It could be just a jumbled mess of whatever. It's yours. Don't judge it, just do it. So I remember, I had a really good game after I saw him. I had 3 points. We were playing against Halifax at night, and we get into overtime, and I'm trying to make a play to win us the game, and I turn the puck over, and they go down and score. So I felt just like a bag of crap. I wanted to run and hide under the rocks, and we had to get on a bus and go on a road trip and go play another game the next night. And I remember breaking out the journal, and I was on the bus before anybody else because I was so upset, and I started writing. And before I knew it, before we even left the parking lot, I had 4 pages of stuff that I was carrying around. And with my history in the bus accident in Swift Current, I had a real hard time sleeping on the bus. That night, I slept better than I ever had on the bus because I didn't have all these things mentally bouncing around in my head. So journaling is a very valuable resource to be able to regulate yourself when you're feeling dysregulated. Exercise and breathing. Obviously, we're in sports, so the exercise helps, but really focusing on the breathing. When you get a little break in the competition, always good. Take a couple deep breaths, especially if you're not happy with the performance, is being able to center and ground yourself, get regulated so that you can get back out there and do what you want to go and do. The meditation is another great one. Again, not something I was introduced to till much later. But I loved to meditate before the games, and everybody has a different way of doing it. I would typically put on my favorite music. And at that time, they were Sony Walkman. So there was this big yellow thing and these huge headphones. And I always had to carry like 15 extra batteries with me because they'd never last a whole road trip. But just playing that music and closing my eyes and visualizing what I was going to do that night. And one of the things that my therapist told me was, visualize all the good plays, create this reel of all the good plays that you've made over your career. And so when you're preparing for a game, when you need to calm down, just think about the good things that you've done, the accomplishments that you've been able to have. So that was extremely valuable for me as well. And I'd be really curious if anybody wants to put in the chat, anything that you found that works for you to help you stay regulated, please do so. We can always share ideas with other people because sometimes people struggle. I don't know what to do. And, by talking it out again, we can share some different ideas and experiences that everybody can benefit from, because we can never have too many tools in the toolbox. That's what it's all about. Some things that I hope that you've learned here tonight, first and foremost, it's about creating those emotionally safe spaces. Make sure that you're regulated. If you recognize that your athlete wants to come and talk to you, but you're dysregulated because you've had a busy day and life is hard for you too, is say, you know what, I would love to, but I gotta go do some things to calm down because I'm not in a good emotional state right now to listen to you. I mean, that's a great thing to be able to teach them, because when they see you doing it, they're going to start doing it. They're watching you like a hawk. They are little mini me's running around. And, when we can develop those skill sets, it's only going to be more beneficial to them. Creating those proper connections in the brain develops a healthy individual. I hope that, the synapses and how the brain develops and the neurons that fire together, wire together, are so important. So if you've got young athletes that are just starting in sport, you want to make sure that you're developing these tools and skill sets within them right now. And if you've got older athletes, it's never too late to start, because we know with the neuroplasticity in our brain, we can develop new patterns of behavior. So it's never too late to start. Understanding the emotions and verbalizing them builds confidence. It's just so important. And we've created this daily emotions log that I want to share with you here, because I think it's really important. So this is something that we've developed. There's lots of stuff out there, but here's a whole list of emotions. And when I work with clients, what I ask them to do as a family, especially when we see a young person that's struggling with their emotions, is to be able to, at the end of every day, check mark all the different emotions that you felt. And then it says, what caused you to feel those emotions? And so now we get to start to learn how to verbalize. And it's really important that this is printed out and they actually start to write these out. There's huge benefit to be able to write things out. And then how did you react when those emotions were activated? Well, the teacher said this, and I thought she was stupid, and I just stopped listening, and I didn't want to do it anymore. Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing. Now let's talk about what tools you did use or that you could have used in that moment. So now we're talking about the skill sets that we want to see developed. And mom, dad, we can all develop those better skill sets. And then, I think the last thing is, what can we improve on? So we're focusing on the progress, right? This is where we're at today, and this is what we didn't do, but what are we going to do in the next situation? It's so important that we're talking about those different things. And then celebrating the small successes. That's the last and most important thing, is when we are successful, to write down, I'm proud of myself that I've regulated myself and I was still able to communicate and find the answers that I needed. It's so important that we understand that, all of these things are doable. We don't have to get into that place where we've put the wall up and we're not talking to anybody. As a young athlete, if you're listening out there, you need to learn this. You will need this more than you can possibly imagine. There's so many young men and women that I've helped over the last 15 years that absolutely do this. And when they develop the skill sets, and when the parents develop the skill sets, and when they develop that relationship with the coach, and we've got those emotional safe spaces, nothing but good things happen. And, if you're like I was and you really have a burning desire to get to that next level, there comes a time when you're going to be on your own. And unfortunately, in youth sports, that means that you're moving away from home at a very young age when you're not fully developed mentally in your brain. And so the sooner that you can pick up these types of skill sets, the more you're going to benefit when it becomes really tough and challenging. The road to get to the top, I can tell you, is one of the most difficult things. People used to say all the time, well, you got to be ready to do this and you got to make sacrifice. And I was not ready, even with the warnings. And I see the same thing happening today. There's very few athletes out there that possess all of the skills, the mental and emotional skills, to be able to manage the challenges as they come. So what do? We suffer. And because we don't know how to communicate, or we don't feel safe to communicate, then we suffer alone. And that's just not a good place to be. And I'm telling you, it's not a place that we need to be. So I hope that those tools have really helped you. You know, talking it out is one of the most valuable skills that we can possess. And youth sports, absolutely, it's only going to enhance the experience. But in your daily lives, as a family unit, with your friends, it's so important that we know how to communicate the things that we're feeling, and we create safe space for each other to do that. That we're not judgmental, that we're open to listening and possibly learning and understanding a different perspective. Those are all things that are only going to help you gain that mental edge. You want to perform better? This is one of the most imperative skills that you need to possess, because there's going to be times where it's very difficult and challenging. And if you can't talk it out, you're probably going to act it out. I want to say thank you to the Flames Foundation and Hull Services again. You know, two partnerships that we are extremely proud of here at I Got Mind, and this would not be possible. I cannot tell you how much work has gone into creating this environment to be able to share this valuable information with you. It's hundreds of hours, and there's several people on the team. And I have to thank Tanya Lewis and Rayanne Moisenko and Sadie Wilkie and my mom, Judy Wilkie, my family, Mikey and Cy, for creating the space where I can do this at 10 o'clock at night, because I want to make sure that I get it right. Our passion here is to help you. I lived through the pain, and I don't want to live through that pain again. And I don't want my kids to deal with it. And I don't want the kids and the families that we supported I Got Mine to have to either. We can eliminate a lot of these challenges by just becoming educated, by learning, by listening. And those are the things that are going to help us learn how to talk it out rather than act it out. We got one more thing that we want to share here. And it's Dr. Bruce Perry talking about, the challenges of developing these skills. And I think it's really important as we finish up here that you realize that any good skill is going to take some time to develop.
You're absolutely right. And I think the word skill is really important there, Bob, because you just don't automatically know how to do this stuff. You know, you learn it by seeing somebody else do it. And then if somebody intentionally, explicitly helps you learn how to do that, that's really the best way to get there. But and then a lot of us, when we try, kids, what'll happen is, in adults too, is that you bottle it up, and then you blow up. And of course, that's when we say I express my emotions. Yeah, I express it all over the living room, and now there's a broken glass, and I've sworn at you, and blah blah blah. That's my expressed emotion. But obviously, that's not the way to do it. And so people need to learn how to do it the right way, particularly around intense emotions.
Intense emotions are created in sport. That's why we love it, right? When somebody scores a goal or gets a 10, right? What do? We jump out of our seats and we cheer as loud as we can, because it's that intense emotion. We're waiting for that kind of performance. And that's why, going into performances and being clear, being focused, that only comes when we're not carrying anything around. And if we're not able to talk it out, then we're carrying stuff around. We got a great question here. What should we do when the coach expects perfection and you as a parent are trying to teach your child to accept making mistakes and learn from them? This is a really difficult situation, and it happens a lot. And again, I think that having that relationship where we can talk those things out, that we can help them understand that, the coach doesn't possess the skills that we do in being able to talk about it. And he is very demanding what we should do maybe is set up a meeting and let's go talk to the coach and let's really try and clarify some of the things that you're uncertain about. Or me as a parent might want to set up, and I love to do this at the beginning of every year, is have that one-on-one with the parent. And if I'm a parent going to the coach saying, listen, there's some things you need to know about my kid. And if you're going to handle them and coach them, there's some things that you need to know. So when you start yelling and screaming, they have a tendency to shut down. So you may see a difference in their performance. Again, creating that open dialogue where we can share our experiences and our perspectives is only going to allow us to be better as a group. So it's a difficult one, and not all the time is that coach going to be willing to, and it's simply because of the lack of skill set. So, again, reinforcing with our children why it's so important that we're having these chats before and after is so that we can give you the ideas and the confidence to go into an environment where you don't really feel emotionally safe and still be able to perform. And that's a very valuable skill set, especially if you want to be an elite athlete, because there's a lot of coaches out there that just demand that perfection and that performance. And failure is not something that they're going to tolerate, even though a lot of coaches say, I want you to make mistakes and it's okay to make mistakes. And then the minute you make a mistake, you're punished for it. I was with the Kamloops Blazers this weekend. They're preparing for playoffs. And that was one of the things that we had a big group meeting. And one of the things that really bothers these kids is making mistakes. And the coaches, as we sat around and talked after, and it's like, man, we got to do a way better job at not, just pointing out all the little mistakes. That it was only through this safe space that it came out that these coaches learn these things. So there's a lot of different challenges, and I hope that answered your question a little bit. Is there any other questions that we have here, Sadie? It's good. How I regulate calling my safe person to talk things out. Jody, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. That's exact. Think of things that you're grateful for. Those are great too. There's a lot of different things that we can do. We just have to make sure that that's part of our development. Physical development only is not going to be enough. We have to make sure that we're developing the social, mental, and emotional skills that are going to allow us to perform physically at a much higher level. We've got, when's our next show? Our next show, here we go. So in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing this every 2 weeks. It's a series of 5 total. Episode 2 of the 5-part series is called the Stress Performance Zone. And a lot of athletes really can battle with stress. And stress gets a bad rap. Stress is something that we can use. So in that session, we're going to be talking about that. If you enjoyed this one, please share it. Please try and get it out as much as you can to as many people as you can. We're always looking for new sponsors. If you're interested in getting involved or getting your organization involved and you run a business and you would love to support them, reach out and contact us. And I think, Sadie, you were going to put something in the chat with how to reach out to us or how to book a time to meet. It's so important that you understand that we need your help. Youth sports organizations, unfortunately, don't have a lot of money to do this kind of training, nor do we charge a lot for this kind of training, but we put a lot of time and effort. And we've got a great team here at I Got Mind of 15 different facilitators with coaches and people with 30 years coaching experience and teachers and former NHL coaches and physicians and clinicians and all sorts of different people that want to help you solve your problem. So it's really important that you're reminding yourself that this is important work. And hopefully those are the things that are going to, find that piece that you need to have, and you can get to the performance level that you want. Thank you so much for joining us here on our live stream. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. And please share this information with as many people as you can. It really helps us, and the Flames and Hull Services have been so great at allowing us to do this. So let's get it out to as many people as we can. Until then, take care of yourself. I'm Bob Wilkie, and thank you for being here. Thanks, everybody. I'm just looking at the chats. Thank you, Sadie, for your help here tonight. Oh, I think, we forgot one thing. So just as we're wrapping up, if you have any questions, go to igotmind.ca. We have a ton of courses that we've created. You can reach out to us and book a free consultation. You'll see it on the homepage. It's very easy to access. There it is there. Thanks, Sadie. This is what the website looks like. You can see the button there, book a free consultation. And there's lots of information about what we do and what we offer. We've got parent courses, we've got coach courses, and of course, we've got lots of athlete education. So there's resources here at I Got Mind. This is what we're committed to. And if we can help in any way, please let us know. Thanks, Sadie, for putting that up. All right, everybody, you have a great night. Take care of yourself out there. Hopefully the weather's going to get warm wherever you are, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.